You know, Kishore, you and I agree that the world is a very cruel place. You said something in your book, page 85 or something, that Tommy Cole disagree, but I'm with you on that point. That is, the international arena is a jungle. There are laws, there are rules, tribunals, and conventions, and this and that. But they are only there as tools of the major powers. And it is very much a jungle, as you have described. But Singapore, on the other hand, was able to do things that are against the bigger boys. And you do things that are politically incorrect. And Lee Kuan Yew didn't give a damn about it. And he insisted on it. For example, Singapore's educational system, while educating every man and woman as much as possible, they also are very elitist. Today, in much of the world, including Hong Kong, if you were to use the word elite, that we are the elitist, we train elites, you will be banished. And Singapore is able to do that. Has Singapore lost that edge today because you are now wealthy? Or are you still bucking the trend, pushing the envelope, in doing what makes sense, frankly, common sense, and hence succeeding?
Well, I think the good thing about Singapore is that we have in some ways made a very important transition. Well, in the early years, we succeeded because we had very strong, exceptional leaders, as I mentioned. And, you know, we've had, I must say, this is unusual, by the way. I mean, if you look at the United Kingdom, for example, you look at the recent prime ministers. I mean, Boris Johnson was a joker. His successor, Liz Truss, was a joke. I mean, you can see, therefore, if a country like UK has difficulty producing great prime ministers, Singapore has been very fortunate. You know, we've only had 4 prime ministers and 4 exceptionally competent prime ministers. Very different,
agree,
but very successful in their own way. But this also reflects the fact that over time, as we have developed, we have also developed strong institutions in Singapore now. So, for example, in the early days when we started off, when I joined the foreign ministry, there must have been about 15 or 20 people in the foreign ministry. Now there are over 1,000, I believe, diplomats that we have. So we have grown significantly, and we have developed the institutional bench strength, plus what you might call muscle memory. So we remember episodes and how we handle crisis. I mean, in my book, I describe what happened when Mr. Lee Kuan Yew very bravely decided to expel an American diplomat in the 1980s. Now that's amazing. In those days, the United States was clearly by far the most important country in the world. Singapore was a little tiny dot, little tiny red dot, and we decided to expel an American diplomat. And that obviously is a very risky thing to do. But if you read my book, you'll see how Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was very careful in the way that he managed the whole thing. And he could, as Giorgio once said, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew is a man who can unleash a political storm and pull back a political storm.
Wow.
Now that takes incredible skill, by the way. Incredible. Lee Kuan Yew had that, right? But now we have developed the institutional bench strength that replaces some of these things.
Before opening to the floor, can you give us a summary of how you see the world today in no more than 5 minutes? You said that Hong Kong will have a hard time in the coming 10 years. I agree. And you said somewhere else that China will have a lot of challenges in the next 10 to 20 years because of the United States, hitting on China.
Yeah.
But can you tell us what you think, how it may end? Number one. Number two, what about some of the other major players in the world, like Russia, like Indonesia, like India, Japan? Can you say a few words?
Well, actually, to give you a decent answer, I must follow Fidel Castro and give you a 3-hour speech now. No, but I think if you give me 5 minutes, the thing that the key point I want to emphasize to everybody is, I'm very glad that I'm alive today, because I think you're going to see incredible changes over the next 10 years. The world is changing fundamentally on many fronts, okay? Right? I've spoken about the end of the era of Western domination of world history. That's happening as we speak. The return of Asia, that's happening as we speak. And all this is creating a whole new world order. Now, if I want to give a very brief summary of this world order, I describe it as a 3M world. 3M is not the company in Minnesota. But 3M stands for one, multi-civilizational.
Multi-civilizational.
So because they're with the end of Western domination of world history, there are many successful civilizations in the world, including the Sinic and Indic civilizations, China and India rising clearly. And then number 2, it's multipolar. So you used to have very clear centers of power, 1 or 2 centers of power. Now, you're moving in a world where there are many independent poles, and even some of the middle powers can assert themselves and behave completely independently of the great powers. So the capacity of the great powers to control the game in the way that they could in the past is diminishing.
Can you give examples?
Well, I give you an example. In theory, Turkey is a NATO ally and should be listening to United States and should be, compliant with United States. But Erdogan is completely independent. He maintains his separate relationship with
Russia,
Vladimir Putin, and he takes the independent positions on many issues. So that's one example, but there are many other such examples. I'll give you another example. Even as we speak, it's quite amazing. The Malaysian Prime Minister has decided to go to Moscow. Now, I'm sure that it's going to anger the United States and Europe, but he's saying, I'm an independent leader. I will do what I want to do. So the sense of agency that the middle powers have is more than it was in the past. And the third M is multilateral. And so you will see that as we live in a small global village, where we live, everything is interdependent and we have to work together. In a small global village, you need global village councils. And therefore multilateral institutions, whether it's the United Nations, G20, or even regional multilateral institutions like ASEAN, multilateralism is going to become stronger and stronger in the world.
偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹润。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好。用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧。